Welcome, and thank you for listening to Sandy Creek Stirrings. I'm your host, Joshua Jimenez.
And if you're going to win souls, you've got to love souls. In spite of their meanness, in spite of the way they look, in spite of everything, you've got to seek to bring souls to Jesus Christ because you love them, because Jesus loved them, and because Jesus died for them, and you're trying to bring them to the Son of God.
The Bible says in Psalm 84:11, my last verse, "For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly." I've based my whole life on that it pays to serve God, and I believe that with all my heart.
God has given us a guidebook. God has given us a directional map. And that guidebook, that map, is the precious Word of God.
Listen, don't just go and sit in the pew. Find some way to serve, and serve as a family. Be a part of everything at church. And when you learn to love what God loves, your children will learn to love it as well.
Homes are not that spiritually strong. We're getting overtaken by the world quickly, but unfortunately, we're pumping all the sewage in. We're letting the world in when that ought to be a haven.
I personally feel that games can be one of the best way a couple can spend time together. They get you away from the TV, and they help you to build good conversation. I think my favorite part of my wife and I playing games together is the conversations we have. We get to have some wonderful conversations around a board game or around a card game. Now, we may be playing a game, and we'll get into some great conversations, and I love that, and I think it's a great thing for couples to do. So overall, it's really a wonderful quality time together, a great relationship building tool. And I think that if you implement game playing within your marriage, if you don't already, it can be a wonderful way for you and your wife to connect after a long and busy day and to really just enjoy each other's company. And if something in my life can help me to accomplish that goal, that's something I want to implement in my life. And so my wife and I were talking about 10 games that we feel we play a ton of, and we feel like are great games for conversation starters, for just playing together, and just having a good time. You want a game that's enjoyable. So there's going to be card games, there's going to be board games, there's going to be games in between. And so we're going to talk about those, give our top 10. Now, these aren't going to be just your classic games that you already know of. For instance, you won't find Uno on this list. My wife loves Uno. I hate Uno. And maybe that's part of the reason it didn't make it on this list, but she loves Uno. But you're not going to see those classic games on there like Skip Bo or Phase 10 or Dominoes or if you're a Monopoly fan, maybe Monopoly or those classic board games like the Game of Life. Those aren't going to make it on this list today because we're going to try and give you something a little different. Maybe some games that maybe you have heard of, but maybe you haven't heard of. Games you probably don't have in your closet, potentially, depending on how big of a game player you are. And so you'll find links for all these games in the show note description of this episode, typically right below where you're listening, or if you're listening on the website, just click the title of the episode. It'll take you to that episode page, and you'll find the description for that episode. Maybe some of you didn't know that, but that's where you can find it, and you'll find a link for all of these games within this description. By the way, this is great for couples, but great two-player games just in general. And if you have siblings or something and you'd like to play a game with them, get something new, these games will work for you as well. Many of these are available to play for more than 2 players, but we find they work well just for couples game nights as well. So let's get right into the list, and we're going to start off with number 10 and work our way down to our number 1 game for couples. So number 10 is going to be more on the classic side, but a little different. It's going to be number 10 is going to be Farkle. Now, it's a dice game where you roll dice to try and get the most points. And so what you do is you roll the dice. I think you have 6 dice in your hand, if I remember correctly. And you roll them, and the dice, depending on what they are, there's rules and instructions, and we're not going to give the instructions or rules for every single game. We're just going to give a brief overview, give some pros, give some cons, and then just an overall type of look at the game. But basically, you roll dice, you try and get points, but you can lose the points on your turn if you don't pick the right time to stop. Because if you roll again and there's no points, you lose all the points you added up. So it's really a luck game. Because, it is dice. Dice is based on luck. But it adds a little bit of a strategy to it by making you pick when you need to stop rolling. The pros of this game are it comes in typically a little container, so it's easy to pull out. It's easy to travel with. I think every trip we've ever gone, we always take our little Farkle container, and we just throw it in the bag. It's super easy to take, and it doesn't take too long to play. It can take longer depending on who you're playing with, but it doesn't take too long to play, and it doesn't take too much brain. If you're a person who, when you're like, I'm done with work, I had a hard day of work today, and I don't feel like thinking very hard. I don't feel like putting on my strategy mind cap and trying to think through how to play a game. This is the game for you then. Farkle's just easy to play. It's easy to travel with, and that's just a great pro. And also, it allows you to have a lot of conversation while you're playing because it doesn't take a whole lot of thought process. And so it allows those good conversations to come about. And overall, it's just a great game. There is one con, and that would be something I already mentioned, is it's mainly based on luck. But the rules of Farkle do help to provide a little bit of strategy, but it's mainly based on luck. I'm not a huge guy that enjoys games based, for the majority of time on luck. I like strategy games. So that's my main con. But overall, it's a good game. You'll pull it out, and it's great for not only couples, but it's also great for bigger groups as well. And it makes sense on those nights where you want to play a game, but maybe you want to watch a movie later or something. This is a short game you can play together and then go on about and do something else. Read a book, watch a movie, do whatever you need, go to bed early. This is a great game for that type of thing. Number 9 on this list is going to be Monopoly Deal. Now, I said there wasn't going to be Monopoly because Monopoly Deal is not a board game. It's not your classic Monopoly. It's Monopoly and cards, and it's a lot shorter. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect sets of cards. You're going to charge rent on the sets you have. It's kind of similar to Monopoly, the game style. And then you get to steal cards from the other player because it's a card game. And you end up winning. I think you have like 3 sets of cards and you win. In the pros for this game, now I love Monopoly, the original board game. I can play it all the time. I know most people that I know aren't a huge fan of Monopoly. And so a pro for some people is it's not really Monopoly. So games aren't going to be nearly as long. You can play it in as short 10 to 15 minutes, and it'll be done. Of course, you can play more rounds if you want, but it doesn't take long to play. And drawing cards can always add a level of luck to a game if you have to draw cards, but your decision-making within the game does make it a little bit strategic to where you do have to figure out exactly what you're going to do. It's a small pack of cards, so it's easy to travel with. If you're going on vacation or something, you can throw it in the suitcase, and it's not going to take up any room at all. And it's not super brainy. You can play it and not have to think too hard. The con with Monopoly Deal, and I was talking with my wife about this, and we're trying to figure out exactly what the con would be for Monopoly Deal. And I think we both felt after you develop your strategy in Monopoly Deal, there's no changing the game. And for some people, the level of playability may go down for those who are strategy junkies. It may go down because once you figure out how you're going to play, you'll play the same way every time, and it can kind of get a little bland. But we still pull it out. We still play it a fair amount of time, and it's still a great game. Overall, it's a classic style card game. You will pull it out from time to time, maybe not as much as other games, though. But when you do, you'll probably play it for 3 to 4 days straight, and then you'll put it back on the shelf for a couple weeks. But it's a great game. If you don't have it in your game closet, it's one you'll want in there. It's good to teach other people as well. Number 8, for my wife and I, and some people may completely disagree with this game being on this list, because this is, as I said, there's only one classic game on this list, and it's going to be number 8. And this is based probably more on my wife and I's personal opinion. You probably will disagree with me. But number 8 for us, we felt chess should be on this list. Now, when my wife and I got married and we went on our honeymoon, I taught her I had a little travel chessboard. And I had thrown it in my suitcase because it had, it was one of those multi-pack games. So it had checkers, it had chess, it had Chinese checkers, it had backgammon. It was one of those little cheap little sets. And I'd thrown it in my thing because, we wanted to play a game, so I threw it in there. And so we played. I taught her how to play chess. She didn't know how to play chess, so I taught her how to play chess on that little travel board. We ended up playing so many games in the first of chess. We ended up playing so many games of chess in the first 2 days we were married that we went out on the third day and just bought an actual chessboard from Toys R Us when they were still open. And that's how much we enjoyed it. We don't play chess as much anymore, but we felt it should be on this list, and we pulled out every now and then. The pros are it's a classic. It's a classic. I firmly believe that every gentleman should know how to play chess. That's just my opinion. It's a Joshua-ism. You can take it or leave it. I don't care. But I think every gentleman should know how to play chess because it is a gentlemanly type game. It's the ultimate, and I think there's much to say that it's the ultimate strategy game of all time. There is no luck whatsoever. You plan every move. You plan some moves 3, 4, 5 turns in advance. It's the ultimate strategy game. And it brings, when you pull it out and you set it on your table and you set up the pieces, it brings a certain level of history to your table. Because this game has been around since the 6th century. 500, AD, 6th century. It's been around for a really, really long time. And another pro is, depending on how serious you are, you can still have a good level of conversation during chess. If you're one of those real thinkers, forget it. They're not going to talk to you. But my wife and I, we're just casual chess players. We'll pull it out, and we'll have good conversations because we're not like this very in-depth, like, oh, I'm gonna win in 3 moves. No, we're not that serious about it. So you can have good conversations depending on what level of chess player you are. The cons are one game can take a while depending on your chess level. If you got somebody who's a real chess player and they just want to, cat and mouse you, it could take a while. It can kind of be dry at points. Chess can kind of just be dry, can kind of be bland. It's the same thing over and over and over again. So that could be a con. And frankly, we find that we don't play it as much because it's just not as exciting as some other games. It's just this normal bland, board with little squares and the same little people. It can get bland sometimes. I don't know how else to put it, but overall, it's a classic game. There's a reason it's still around. It's been played for so long, for 1,600 years now. I mean, there's a reason it's still here. So I think it belongs right there at number 8. You may disagree with me. If you do, send that to me, Joshua@SandyCreekStirrings.com, and tell me what game you would have preferred at spot number 8. Spot number 7, though, is going to belong to a game by the title of Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride. It's really this game where you set up the game board, and it's a map of the United States of America. It spreads across the board, and your goal is to stretch your trains. You're like a train tycoon. You're stretching your trains across the map from city to city. And in your hand, you'll have destination cards. And if you complete those destination cards, from like Dallas to Miami or whatever, you get that amount of points on that card. And so there's many ways you can gain points, but that's your main way, is to get those destinations. It's a fun game. It's got an interesting looking board. It's exciting, whereas I talked about chess, the board is just not exciting. Ticket to Ride, it does have an exciting game board, and you'll come back to that game just wanting to play it more. The pros are it's got great graphics. Those little train cars are the coolest little thing, and it causes you to think and to try and figure out how to spoil the other person's plans. At least that's me. Because if my wife is trying to make it to a certain destination and there's only one passage left, even if I don't need it, I'll seal it up so I know she can't get to that city. And she hates that. But we just have a great time with it. And you try to build the longest train and reach as many destinations as you can is definitely enjoyable. And it's going to be different than other games. There's not a whole lot of games that play the same way that Ticket to Ride does, so it's very different, and it's just an enjoyable game. You will be going back to that one for more. On the con side, you will need at least a minimum of about half an hour, and that's not a whole lot of time for game playing. For some people, it might be, but you'll need about a minimum of a half an hour to play a game. And overall, it's just one that we've really enjoyed. If you have Ticket to Ride, let me give you a little tip. For my wife and I, we found, it's made for 2 to 5 players, but we found it very enjoyable to use the 2 train colors a piece. So, for instance, I'll take black and yellow instead of just taking black, or she'll take blue and red instead of just taking red. And it gives the game more length and gives it more depth when you use 2 train colors. Number 6, here we go. Let's move on quickly. Number 6, a card game called Virus. A card game called Virus. Now, it's a card game where your goal is to build a body, and then you're building it out of body parts, bones and organs and things like that. And then you keep viruses away from your body. And what people can do is they can take a virus and they can put it on your body and infect your body. And basically you have to try and cure the body. It's a fun little card game to play. And so the pros are it's not too hard to learn. The level of complexity is perfect for good conversations during the game, and you'll find yourself pulling it back out and playing it even later down the road. It's a good go-back-to game, and you'll be pulling that one out constantly. Once again, another game with these card games, you can just slide them into your suitcase if you're traveling. Great game to travel with. Cons are some may be offended by its gameplay. If you're a big mask wearer, it is about viruses and infections. So I'll just put that right out there. Overall, it's a good game for couples. Good game for smaller groups as well. So it's perfect for a night when you want a simple card game to take to the table. Virus is right there. Don't forget all of these games. There are links in the description for you to be able to go and buy these games. Number 5 on our list, and this may be controversial for some, but number 5, we have Exploding Kittens. Exploding Kittens. It was one of the biggest Kickstarter games in history and has had great success. It's a card game, once again, and they claim it to be like a Russian roulette style gameplay. And so your goal is to be the last one standing when everyone else has been blown to smithereens by the exploding kittens. At the end of every turn, you draw from the deck of cards, and if you get an exploding kitten, you either need to defuse the exploding kitten if you have a defuse card in your hand, or you're blown to smithereens and you're out of the game. And so there's also other cards where you can, increase the chance that an opponent will explode before you do. So it's just a fun little game. Pros are, it's just a fun game. That's literally a pro. It's rather strategic, and it counts on your thinking to have good success. It doesn't take super long to play, and it's a game of quick twists. So be careful, because you'll never know when the table will turn. And there was one game we played of Exploding Kittens. We got all the way to the end. I knew I had beaten my wife, and suddenly the table had turned, and I forgot something, and I exploded. I was dead. So the cons are some of the cards within the game are a little weird. And if you have Exploding Kittens, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, I encourage you to buy it. I think it's a great game. Some of the cards are a little weird, so I'll just put that out there. Overall, my wife and I enjoy the game. We taught it to my dad and mom, and they enjoyed it so much, they took it on one of their recent vacations with them, and they played it. And so it's just a good game to take with you. Number 4 is a game entitled Dominion. Dominion. Now, I purchased this game as a Christmas gift for my wife right before we were married. We were married January 6th, 2017, and so Christmas was just a couple weeks before that. And so we were going to take it on our honeymoon with us, but she forgot to pack it in the stuff we were taking on the honeymoon. She packed it with the stuff going to the house. So needless to say, that's how we ended up playing chess. But really, it's a card game, but it comes in a board game the size of it comes in a box the size of a board game. It's a big box. And when you open up the box, it's got all these little decks. And what you're doing is you pick 10 decks out of there, and then you pick the money decks and the victory decks. And as I said, we're not getting into all the different rules. But your goal is to build your empire. And you win when you have the most province and victory points in your deck. And so it's a deck building game is what they refer to it as. And it might not make any sense to you as you're listening to me, because I don't explain things very well, but it's a fun game. The pros are, when I say card game, it's unlike any card game you've ever played. It's really strategic. It allows for many types of strategy to be used, both offensive and defensive, slower paced styles. It's very playable, as there are many, many different decks, so you can pull different decks out every single time you play, and so each game is going to be different from the other game, and I like that. I like for my games to have playability where they're different every single time. The cons are, the first time you play, You'll read through the instructions, you'll play the game, and you'll be sitting there during the first game being like, I have no clue what I'm doing. This makes no sense. I'm following the rules, like the rules make sense, but I don't really get it. It will click. It will click after your first game is done. After the first game is done and it's over, you'll realize, oh, okay, I get it now. That's a con, though, because I remember my wife and I, the first time we played, we sat there and we thought, we have no clue what we're doing. What is the point? And that may sound like a big con to you, but it's worth it to get it. And second con is, in some ways, the strategy can get a little dry. As I said, I'm a strategy junkie. If you're not, you won't care. But it can get a little dry. Once you develop your play style and you win multiple times, you're going to be set and you're going to play the same way every time, even though the decks will change. And so overall, after 5 years of marriage, this game still makes it out on a consistent basis to our table. Consistently. And we've taught it to others, taught it to many people within our church, and we love it. It's a great game for multiple people. There is a disclaimer I do want to put out on Dominion. And that disclaimer is, among the decks that you choose for each game to buy from, there is what's known as the witch deck. It's a deck with witch cards. And I did not know that when I bought the game. And I'll be honest with you, we don't play with the witch deck. It's just something we don't use. We don't do things with witchcraft. I didn't know that when I bought the game, so I wanted to put out the disclaimer. It is not necessary to have that deck to play the game, so it's not like you have to include it somehow. You can literally take the cards and throw them away. And so I did want to put that disclaimer out there. Number 3 is a game entitled Nefarious. And so basically you take on the role of a mad scientist to create inventions. Along the way, you spy on other players, you research for new inventions, you work for money, and you try to beat the other players to the goal of having over 20 invention points. Pros are, it's a neat board game. It is just a cool-looking board game. It's got cool graphics. It's got fun little pieces. And so we play this game all the time and enjoy it. We just taught it to the teenagers a few weeks ago. It's easy to teach to others. Easy peasy. Great game to teach others. And it really doesn't get old. It's a fun game. Cons are, this is going to be a big ouch for some. I know, because it's expensive. It currently sells, and I don't know how we ever bought this game or if somebody gave it to us or something, but it currently sells on Amazon for $70. Goodness, it makes you want to choke. But if you can foot the bill, if you want to buy it, it's a great game to put in your game closet, and you'll pull it out on a consistent basis. It's just fun. And so overall, we love the game. We play it often. We've had it for probably 4 years, and we still play it to this day. Number 2 on this list is a newer game that we got not too long ago, maybe 2 months ago, but you can tell how much we enjoy it because it has jumped right up to the top of our list, almost to number 1. But number 2 is a game entitled Jaipur. I think that's how you pronounce it. I really don't know. It'd be Jaipur. So we've always pronounced it Jaipur. I don't know if it's something else or not. If it is, you can correct me. Email me at joshua@sandycreekstirrings.com. But it's another card game, a little bit bigger of a box compared to some other card games, but it'd still be easy to travel with. But your goal is to be the best trader of the Arab market, and you manage a herd of camels while also making good purchases to build your reputation. Game is played within 3 rounds to determine who is the best tradesman. The pros are, it does not, even with the 3 rounds, it does not take too long to play. The other thing is the graphics, the cards, the little trade coins are super neat. It's one of the coolest looking games you'll ever own. And the gameplay is great. It will keep you coming back for more, and you'll be constantly developing your play style. It'll constantly be working on it. It's a great game. The con is it is only a 2-player game. So if you want to teach it to others in the family, you can't really unless you're not going to play with your spouse. And so it's a 2-player game. You cannot play with more people. I have no idea if there's expansion packs. I don't think there are. And but it's a great 2-player game, great game for couples. My wife and I have just loved this game. We play it, probably 2 to 3 times a week, and we love Jaipur. It's a game worth getting. It's not too expensive. You can get it on Amazon rather cheaply, and just a good game. So Jaipur is another great one. You'll find the link in the description for that one as well. Number one, our top game for couples. And I tell you what, all the other ones from 3 down. Nefarious, Dominion, Exploding Kittens, Virus, Ticket to Ride, Chess, Monopoly, Deal, Farkle, all those games were, jockeying for position. Number one, as soon as we started this list, we wrote number one down, both agreed, and it did not change. Nothing even came close to it. And we firmly believe that it's the best game for couples, period. If you're going to get one game on the list, this is the game to get. And so it's the game entitled Pandemic. And there are 4 kinds of viruses within Pandemic. When you open up the board, it's a board game. When you open up the board, it's a map of the world. And all the different cities, main cities like Beijing, like Shanghai, like Moscow, like Madrid, like New York, like Atlanta, like Sao Paulo, like Mexico City. All these cities are connected to each other. And what you do is there are 4 kinds of viruses within Pandemic, and they're breaking out in cities across the world. And so your goal is you're trying to treat infected cities, keep outbreaks to a minimum, and find the cure for each disease before it's too late. So it's an intense game that will keep you involved in the action. You'll be thinking ahead for the best method of winning. And for those worried, this game came out years before COVID-19 pandemic. It is not a spinoff of what happened. And so this game has been out for a long, long time. Pros are this game is unlike any game you've ever played. And the reason why is you and your spouse are a team. You're working together for the same goal. And so it's different because you're not competing against each other. Your goal is actually to work together to try and stop the disease. You're fighting the disease, not each other. And so the creator of this game, if you read how he developed it, he started to notice small arguments between him and his wife over a game. And so he decided, what if we could create a game where we work together for a common goal? And that's how Pandemic came about. And so the game has won award after award after award, so you know that it's time tested. And it has tons and tons of expansion packs. So if you enjoy it, for me, a pro for any game is if you enjoy the game, if it has expansion packs, then that is just another pro to add on top of it because you can expand the game. And it's challenging enough, Pandemic is, to not be too easy, yet it does allow you to determine the difficulty of the game by certain rules, and then you can grow with the game and allow it to get more difficult as you go along. It has been our most played game. We haven't had it super long, but it has been our most played game over the last 3 months, period. We've gotten new games in that 3-month period of time, but we still constantly and consistently come back to Pandemic. And the good thing is it's not overly expensive either. It's relatively affordable. Cons are, we couldn't really think of any cons. And that's simply why it gets number 1. I cannot think of a con in that regard. That may be why it made it to number 1, is we couldn't think of any cons, but it's just a really great game. And so we've loved it. We've played it over and over again. The game style is so different from others that it belongs in its own category, and that's great when you are a game lover like us. So what do you think? Is there a game on this list that you absolutely hate? Is there a game you absolutely love? You can email me your thoughts at joshua@sandycreekstirrings.com. I would love to hear your feedback, and maybe there's a game that should have been on this list, and email me, because it might be a game I might be interested in getting. So email it to me. Now, remember, the most important thing, though, is for you and your spouse to spend time together, because that'll help grow your relationship. They say a family who plays together stays together. I believe that you can apply that to your marriage as well. So pick up a new game, play with your spouse, grow your marriage. As you do, keep looking up and keep stirred up for the cause of Christ.